You know, every so often we come across a book which we hope and appreciate that you're going to find it interesting as we are. And over the weekend I picked this book up here, The Mormon Murders. Hadn't read it before. I think it might be an American print, but the minute I see something like this, a true story of greed, forgery, deceit and death. And no folks, it's not the Vatican, it's the Mormons. And basically it's a story of a man called Mr. Hoffman. And Mr. Hoffman was a Mormon missionary actually, who came over to England. Mark Hoffman was his name actually. I'm going to show you a picture of him here because there he is there, just before he's being sentenced to go to prison for 3 murders. Can you see that there? Mark Hoffman. But what was so special about Mark Hoffman? Well, he was a Mormon. He was born in a Mormon family in Salt Lake City, and like most Mormon young men, he did his national service. They get sent to all different parts of the world. He came to England, and the part of England he went to was the southwest Bristol area. Now, I've often wondered about Mormons, that you go everywhere in twos. What happens if you're not as committed and dedicated to the Mormon faith as the next guy? You've got to go along with it, put 12 hours a day knocking on doors. Remember, don't forget, they think you work your way to heaven through good works. The more that door slammed in your face, the more good works are going to be notched up there. But it looks like the guy he went out with had doubts about the Mormon faith, as Hoffman did. So when these two went out in Bristol, on the outskirts of Bristol and so forth, one would slip into a local cinema. In those days you had about 2 or 3 cinemas. This would probably be the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And our friend Mark Hoffman would go to the local shops. What was he looking for? Particularly in the local bookshops, the local second-hand bookshops, antique bookshops. He was looking for old copies of the King James Bible. Was he a King James man? Not particularly. He was having doubts about Mormonism, but what he was interested in was the quality of the paper, the velum as they call it. Was it original paper? And most of these King James Bibles, which he was able to get very, very cheaply, 200 years old or something like that, had that remarkable quality of paper. But the thing about Mark Hoffman was not so much he was disillusioned with the Mormon faith, but he wanted to get back to them. And he had a great skill which he was to use later on. He was a forger. He was a master forger. Now, I first came across him a few years ago when I read this book called The Poet and the Murderer. Wonderful book. And what Mark Hoffman did, he started to forge on the paper that he'd got with the King James Bibles. He'd taken sections out to start to forge letters from people like Joseph Smith, Abraham Lincoln, Charles Dickens, and all sorts of other people, Daniel Boone, even George Washington. And he found he was so good at it that he could sell the originals and make a lot of money. What better to take the Mormons on, the people whom he despised, and start saying, I've got some original letters that I've come across written by the founder of the Mormons, Joseph Smith, and this is what he did. Now, as a counterfeiter, he was the supreme master. This guy could have done anything. But what he did was, he started forging 116 of the lost pages of the Book of Mormon. Now apparently, when Joseph Smith started doing this book, the man he used as an interpreter and to help him was a guy called Martin Harris. Didn't know much about this gentleman, but he helped Smith to do a lot of this. But when he went home one day, he lost 116 pages, and the Mormons have long been saying, if only we could find these lost 160 pages, we could incorporate them into the Book of Mormon, but they never turned up, until our friend Mark Hoffman started to forge it. And he did forge it, and he got in touch with one of the bishops in Salt Lake City, because he was from there anyway, and he said, I found the lost 116 pages. This is wonderful, they said, we must have it. But he kept on finding things as well there. He also forged a letter from Joseph Smith's mother, saying that really the leadership of the Mormons should be passed down through the family. Now, a little bit of background here. I'm not going to give you too much because I want you to read James's excellent article on Mormonism. He's gone into a lot more detail than I have. But as you know, the Mormons were founded just over 100 years ago, and they have what is called a prophet. And they believe the prophet is the true middleman between the earth and heaven. And to date, I think there's been 16 prophets, starting with Joseph Smith. 5 of them have been called Smith, but I don't think they're family. But I'm particularly interested in 2 of them because they were there when all these documents started to come in, and somebody started to smell a fish, say something's not right here. Prophet, the 13th prophet was Ezra Taft Benson. Now he seems to have got involved in this on a sort of minor role here. Seems that the magic circle around him was run very much up and running. The man who fielded so much of it was this man here, Gordon Hinckley. You may have heard of him. And he seems to be involved with the everyday running of all of this, checking what's happening there. And even when doubts started to surface about these forged documents, Hinckley was briefing the lawyers. There, you see him there, doing a press conference. Can you see what it says? And as one of the journalists said, can you read it? It said there, these guys are on first name terms with the Lord. They weren't, of course, really on first name terms with the Lord. But he seems to have been the man then. And the other prophet who seems to have been involved in this was a man called Kimball, Spencer Kimball. Now, all of these men were round about this time when these forgeries were coming through that Hoffman was doing. But the man who seems to have been doing the sort of the groundwork, checking it all out, was Hinckley. But he seems to have taken them on, and he seems to have been able to do it successfully. Now, he even did something called the Salamander Letter. Now, the Salamander Letter, possibly written by Martin Harris, I'm not sure, but this states that the salamander, it's a fictitious creature, as you know, not the angel Moroni, appeared to Joseph Smith. So they had to get round this somehow, and it seems that one of the apostles, a guy by the name of Apostle Oakes, I don't know who he was, said that possibly the salamander could be the angel Moroni. So you can see how easy they start glossing over these different things here. Hoffman started getting greedy. Not only was he turning out the Mormon stuff there, he was forging poems by Emily Dickinson. He even tried to forge some Charles Dickens. Wow, imagine that. But he was starting to get greedy. His lifestyle was catching up with him. And it seems that one of the dealers that he'd been using threatens through blackmail, so forth, to blow the whistle on him. And of course, fatal result of this was that he blew up the man. He blew his car up. Oh, there's one of his other forgeries there. There's the Oath of a Freeman. Didn't know much about this. But this is one of the earliest first documents printed in America. I think there's only 58 copies left there. There's one of his forgeries there. It looks good, doesn't it? See the old-fashioned English there? And of course, the man who had to refute all this was Gordon Hinckley. Well, of course, murder came into it. And it says here, on the morning of 15th of October 1905, 2 bombs exploded in different parts of Salt Lake City, killing 2 people. And the next day, a 3rd bomb blew the roof off a car belonging to Mark Hoffman. So he killed these 2 people, but tragically, for him, not for the rest of us, he destroyed that gift that he had to forge documents. He blew his fingers off. He was arrested by the Salt Lake City police and he went on trial. And this book mainly covers the trial, and some of the pictures there. You can see Hoffman there with a lawyer there, Shannon Flynn there, one of Hoffman's lawyers there. Seems to have had several lawyers working on the case, and it seems that they all started to bicker with each other and so forth. I turn the page there. There's one of his lawyers. It's quite a team there, prosecutors and defence and so forth. But he was found guilty. Now the big question was, did Mark Hoffman's wife know anything about it? And it says here, Mark never allowed her in his basement workroom, and she never asked why. No wonder the guy's turning out all of these forgeries. And you can see part of his injury, see his bandaged hands there. But he was found guilty of murder, quite rightly so. He did take the Mormon hierarchy on, and he did show them up for what they were, a greedy, callous bunch, trying to get these letters, and there he is off to prison there. And he was sentenced to prison in 1988. He's been serving life ever since. Don't know whereabouts he is in America. If someone in America knows, please let us know. Perhaps we can send him a Bible tract, but I don't think he thought much of religion. But it just shows the duplicity of the Mormons, that they kept this whole thing going. It's a bit like the Vatican, with all this scandal going on at the moment. You've got Ratzinger wringing his hands saying, oh, what's happening? The thing is that Ratzinger, Carlos Sedana, Secretary of State, the new guy Bertoni, John Paul II were all in the know of what's happening, and I welcome what the Belgian government are doing at the moment to expose these monsters, because that's what these guys are. These 16 prophets, the popes, the cardinals and so forth, they are cold-blooded monsters. This is not the true church. The true church of Jesus Christ is the one church that can save you. Only Jesus can save you. And if you're a Mormon, you don't need all these 16 prophets. You don't need them at all. You don't need the new man now, Thomas Monson, or any of them. You need Jesus Christ. That is the Book of Mormon. It's just a book. It's probably up there with Charles Dickens, Shakespeare, you name it, but it's just a book. That's all it is there. This man took the Mormon church on. He certainly cost them millions of dollars. He almost got away with it, but he got greedy. But greed runs all the way through all these organised religions. If you see it, get a copy and read it. But read James's article for a lot more background in Mormonism. This is what I'm recommending to find out a bit more about what Mark Hoffman was doing. And remember, he's doing time now. Mark Hoffman, the Mormon murderer. A man who took the Mormons on and nearly won. And there he is there.